Hello and welcome to today's video. We need to talk about she who will definitely be named. I am going to make several videos with a Harry Potter theme, but the elephant in the room of dealing with anything Harry Potter related is the author, JK Rowling. If you live under a rock, and sometimes I wish I did, JK has been using her public goodwill, her money, and her influence to attack trans people and newly non-binary people. For anyone who does not want to watch the rest of this video, and it's going to be a rough one, the TLDR. I think she is despicable. What she's doing is dangerous, and not just for trans and non-binary people. For those who don't want to watch an entire video of me just explaining my philosophy, I will see you next time. It's absolutely fine. You might be asking yourself, if I don't like her, why am I promoting her with these upcoming videos? Well, that is what this video is for. I will try to explain my relationship to public figures I feel have betrayed my principles and morals. I will warn you, I will not be self-censoring, so there are specific harmful words you would be hearing. This might not be the video for you. This is also largely going to be a bummer. There really isn't any way to discuss bad people without at least naming what they have done. I won't be describing anything in detail, but I do need to name it. I perfectly understand if this isn't something you want right now. I will see you in another video. So I wanted to start by saying if you were a big Harry Potter fan and you feel betrayed by her more recent behavior, I am sorry. It feels bad to have something like this happen. For me in particular, Harry Potter was not a formative experience, and I had no real conception of who JK Rowling was prior to this breakdown. So there was no good person that I now thought was gone. I still very much dislike what she stands for, but I didn't feel betrayed. But I want to continue by telling you about the first time this did happen to me. I was a big fan of the author Philip K. Dick as a teenager. I loved his books. But in the usual way of interacting with art, I interacted with the book and not the person. I knew nothing about the author himself. Then I found out about his personal life. He was violent and controlling with women. He openly admitted to violent bouts with his third wife, of 5, I might add. I have a hard time believing this just popped out of nowhere in his third marriage. When a person gets divorced that much, you need to ask yourself why. He had that wife involuntarily admitted to a psych ward, and the next wife he tried to kill by driving off the road with her in the car. Lovely man. People try to whitewash this by saying he was attempting suicide, but that would have been murder-suicide. He was aware he was not alone in that car. He had long been a paranoid drug addict. If anyone needed to be institutionalized, I suspect it was him. I was probably around 13 when I learned this about him. At that age, I really didn't know what to do with it. Should I burn his books and pretend I'd never heard his name? Should I keep the books and never read them again? I did not know. Obviously, there are more options than that, but you get the idea. I just didn't know how to feel. Now, my case was helped in that he was dead by this point. He had died in 1982. So nothing I did could put money directly into his pocket. I could certainly enrich whoever inherited his estate, but not him. So that felt less complicated. I say this not to invalidate you. This isn't me saying this happens to everyone, so just get over it. I say this to say, I think I know how you feel, and it sucks. For Harry Potter fans, this is a bit different. Where Philip K. Dick died before I ever started reading his books, JK is very much still around, and our activity can very much enrich her directly. So, what do I do when I discover art I like was made by a bad person? I have decided that I can interact with the art, but that I will boycott the person. So, I can reread my books and rewatch my DVDs, because that money passed hands long before this occurred. But if Harry Potter was re-released to theaters, I would not go. If new movies are made, I will not go. I can control how I respond to anything new she creates. So in that vein, I will be making videos that reference Harry Potter, but I will be using nail polish that will not enrich her. But I will not be buying any licensed nail polish that puts money into her pocket. I did not buy her video game for this exact reason. If she wasn't a terrible person, I would have considered it. But by the time that game was made, I knew who she really was, and I made the choice to boycott it. But I do want to say, this will keep happening to you. It won't only be JK Rowling. This is still happening to me. Very recently, it was made public that in all likelihood, Neil Gaiman has been a predatory creep to women. So here I go again. Another author whose art I liked is a garbage person. I will no longer be watching any shows that are created from his books. Literally, as I wrote the script, it seems like Neil deGrasse Tyson is slowly coming out as MAGA. So even if you ignored the sexual harassment complaints from about 5 years ago, which I did not, here we go again. This will keep happening to you too. And again, I am sorry. I know it hurts to feel that you've lost something because of someone else's bad behavior. But I am going to swing back around to this at the end. I want to end on a high note, and that is probably the only high note I've got for you, so I want to save it. Now, you may have also chosen differently when it comes to interacting with art made by terrible people. I respect your view. I think each and every one of us needs to make our own decision about what we're comfortable with. I know some people are going to be more strict than I am, and they will cut Harry Potter completely out of their lives. That is their choice. I also know some people are going to be less strict or have no idea what I'm even talking about. If you're not comfortable with engaging with Harry Potter, I would encourage you to skip those videos. I would not want you to violate your own beliefs in the same way that I will not violate my own. Guys, I wrote like 4 pages explaining exactly why I thought JK Rowling was dangerous and what she was doing was terrible and what I really thought she was doing. But it's too fucking much. It's too much. I don't think it belongs in this video. If you really want it, I can put it in another video, but I'd like to just summarize something for you instead. This is from a conversation my husband and I had a couple of years ago, I guess, at this point. What is it about trans people? What is it that the people attacking them feel makes them an optimal target for this sort of scapegoating? One aspect of this is just the tiny amount of trans and non-binary people. The last figure I heard was that they constituted 0.1% of the population. It is much easier to scapegoat someone if most of the population is never going to interact with that group. The conclusion we came to was that is not the only reason. And what we came up with was that they break the gender binary in a way that is probably very uncomfortable for misogynists and white supremacists. I will say that I do think white supremacists are by definition misogynists because they view women as lesser than men in their hierarchy. In their worldview, men are superior. There's exactly one way to be a man and exactly one way to be a woman. And men and women share 0 characteristics. If women are gentle, then men cannot be gentle. If men are smart, women must be stupid by definition. And this is both natural and mandatory to them. They do not accept any evidence of their eyes and ears to the contrary. They are what I would call gender essentialists. If a man could become a woman, as transness suggests, This violates the entire underpinnings of their worldview. To them, a man could never be a woman because they're so diametrically opposed, and also women would be awful to be. They're the better sort of person right now as a man. Why would they want to be? Why would they want to be a worse sort of person, i.e. a woman? And if any man could become a woman, then maybe they specifically might be capable of being a woman. Terrifying to them, I think. For me, this helps to explain why they never seem to fear women transitioning to men. I think they fear not being at the top of the hierarchy as a man, and that they could transition to being women and fall down the hierarchy that they themselves created and continue to uphold. But that's what we think is happening. That for these people, it breaks their fundamental beliefs about people and society. They're wrong, just as their gender essentialism is wrong, but they don't want to hear that they're wrong. They want to make the world conform to them, not change themselves. The other thing I do want to say about this before we get off this particular topic is I do believe that this is a moral panic, and not just a moral panic that has been purposely curated, which I think makes it even more disgusting. There are other YouTubers who have taken longer, more detailed looks at this topic, and I'm definitely going to point you their way. I will link a couple of video essays in the description. I will leave you with Contrapoints, who has talked about JK Rowling several times. I will also leave you with Shaun, who has talked about the links of anti-trans activists to white supremacy. These two things make excellent bedfellows because they share some ideology, which is why I think this should be rejected. I'm also going to point you to Mia Mulder, because in Mia Mulder's video, she brings up societal taboo and disgust. And I think those are very important when we are talking about this topic. I think all of these people have put more time and effort than I have into making videos, and I do think they are worth the view. All of them are long. This is I'm going to deep clean the kitchen sort of podcast type thing. Okay, guys, we made it past the bad part. We've done it. I know it was rough. I'm sorry. There's a lot of nastiness in there. And I know I mentioned that I wanted to come back around to a point. I want to say that one of the reasons I decided to continue to engage with the art is that I found that without art, I thought life was uglier and less meaningful to me personally. And if I had to go through the entire roster of artists that exist and knock off anyone that violated my morals, I would not be left with a lot. A lot of art was made at a time that was extremely misogynistic, and that alone would just mean almost nothing would be available to me. Please do not look up Picasso. It will ruin everything for you. I like video games, fantasy and sci-fi novels. As you've probably seen through the videos, I like older art. And all of that is tainted by the attitudes and actions of people who are not good people. Except Ursula K. Le Guin. Shout out to Ursula K. Le Guin. She remains steadfast. The industries that produce the things I like are packed with misogynists, racists, con artists, frauds. I don't think it is fruitful to just cut art out of your life. Art can bring you intellectual curiosity, beauty, history, all of these things. I think it is more meaningful to engage with a piece of art for what it is. And in doing so, you are not ignoring the person who made it. You are taking that into account. That is what I do with Harry Potter. I don't ignore JK Rowling. I just take her into account when I engage with it. This does not mean that I think we should exalt a person who has behaved badly, but I think there does need to be some other path for those of us that disagree morally and ethically. And here the death of the author does not work because it's not the intent of the author that we need to consider. It is the morality of the author. Death of the author does not mean you just treat the author like they've died, or the artist. Humans are complex. We're capable of understanding that a person may be bad, but there would be no way for us to know that until some sort of singularity, some point in time, some event. A time when that knowledge becomes widespread and known. And in the meantime, you may have formed an emotional attachment to something that a bad person created. That is why I choose to interact with the art, but not the artist. Again, you may choose something different. Feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm not the sort of person to yell at you in the comments just because you chose differently. But this is what I have chosen for my own sanity. Because if I didn't, I might literally deprive myself of all beauty in the world, and at the same time render myself responsible for identifying all of these people. That would require me to be eternally vigilant about every piece of art that exists, or will ever be created. This would mean that I would have to constantly scan to make sure something I liked was not newly tainted. That's too much for one person. And you are also just one person. The responsibility to investigate every piece of art is too much for you too. And you also deserve beautiful and intellectually stimulating things in your life. And you deserve that without bearing the fear and anxiety that would come from having to surveil artists constantly. Am I saying you should ignore bad behavior? No. Clearly, I respond to it myself. What I am saying, it's not your responsibility to lead an expedition. I know about JK Rowling's transphobia because it reached a tipping point and became widely understood that she was scapegoating them. If she had tweeted once and never mentioned it again, I do not think we would be where we are now. I'm not saying that you should remain ignorant. I'm just saying that it is okay for you to limit how you want to interact with the world for your own good. Removing all art from your life sounds depressing and horrible to me. And that is what an overbearing sense of responsibility would do. You are responsible to yourself, you are responsible to your community, and you are responsible to humanity. But you do not control other people's behavior. JK Rowling is responsible for JK Rowling's antisocial behavior. You can respond to it if you like, and I would encourage that, but not to the detriment of yourself. I would say enjoy the art, but don't make an artist or author an idol. Don't go looking to weed everything out of your life unprompted by some tipping point event. Would I encourage you to read someone else's books? Yes. Would I demand that you hate hers? No. But this is the good part. There is so much art. It might feel bad because you feel you've lost something, but life is constant change. I would see it as a chance to add something new to your life. You don't have to become sad or it become meaningless to you. It can just be part of a complex web of things that you identify with. And when there are enough things in that web, the difference of one strand doesn't really feel like a loss, just a change. Hopefully that's something positive you could take going forward. There is other art out there. It is also interesting and beautiful. I know this was so much just to talk about nail polish. I did think it was required. And I did feel like I skipped around a bit, but I was becoming concerned this was going to be 2 hours long. Certainly, if you want those other 3 pages I wrote, I can make a video, but I'm not really sure you're going to hear anything new that isn't in those other videos I'm going to link in the description. I think my overall view of this is you need to let yourself be a person with some freedom of mind, that you cannot let yourself be caged by other people's behavior. But at the same time, you also need to recognize when someone like JK Rowling is undermining the humanity of someone else, and when they need your defense. Because sometimes the voice of a stranger does matter. I know it's a bit weird and out of character for this channel, but I can't promise this will be the last weird thing I do. I normally try to keep the channel sort of neutral, not entirely. Like, clearly I will take shots at certain things I find particularly egregious, especially Gale. But that is everything for today. I will see you in the next one. Bye.